Badass business owners, welcome to another episode of the Local Small Business Coach Podcast, where each episode we work on getting you to $100,000 in take-home pay. So if you're all ready to boost your profits, increase your sales, improve your processes, and develop stronger teams so you can stop living job to job, then let's dive in. Hey, badass business owners, welcome back to the show. How's everybody doing? All right, today we're going to talk about cash flow. This question actually came from Paul over in the Badass Local Small Business Owner Facebook page, and it was actually a great question. There were a few people that said yes, and it's also something that I've had conversations with other people about. And it's also one of those terms that you need to understand for your business. And the first thing we have to do is understand what cash flow even is. Basically, it's not your sales, it's not your profits, but it's about the flow of money through your business. And do you have enough money or not have enough money during certain times of your business? It's basically the money flowing through the business. Now, before we dive in too much, I want to actually do the quote. I forgot the quote last week. I couldn't believe that. So the quote is this. It comes from Sir Richard Branson. You guys have heard of Richard Branson. More than likely, he's done Virgin Records, Virgin Airlines, the guy that owns Necker Island, kind of rich guy. He's done a bunch of different stuff. But here's his quote. "Never take your eye off the cash flow, because it is the lifeblood of the business." Never take your eye off the cash flow, because it is the lifeblood of the business. And that is so right. Do you know that the number one reason that local small business owners, or business owners in general, it doesn't really matter, go out of business, it has to do with the lack of cash flow? Because let's face it, we can't pay our bills, we can't pay our employees. It doesn't matter how much money you're bringing in. And by the way, there are businesses out there doing millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they do not have the money, the cash flow, to be able to pay what they need to pay. Now, your cash flow could be hurting for a lot of different reasons, which we'll talk about as we go through today's episode. But basically, a lot of it is you just don't have enough cash to pay the bills. Okay. So now that could come because you're just not making the right profit margins within your business. It could be that you're spending money willy-nilly and you're just not saving any of it. It could be that your sales do not produce enough cash during your slower months. So as you can see, this is a great episode to follow up last week's episode of seasonal business, because a lot of times when people get into a serious cash flow problem is due to the seasonalities of business. Now, I'm going to warn you, I kind of jotted down a lot of notes for today, and I want to give a special shout out because I wanted to make sure that I hit this thing really good. I actually reached out in a couple of places just to kind of make sure I didn't forget anything. And for those of you in the Badass group over there, you know of Moshe Klein. He's over in there. He owns an accounting firm, and he shared one of his presentations from the past that he's used, and I want to give him a special shout out. And also some folks over in another Facebook group that I'm a part of, Small Business Owners. If you're not part of it, you should try to look into that one as well. And just kind of reached out trying to see if they had any thoughts and stuff. And it was interesting, and it was great because actually when I looked at all of these folks and the materials that they shared, it really lined up with what I wanted to share. So it was a great confirmation that what I'm going to share with you today is going to help you out. Now, I do want to warn you, I might jump around a little bit. So for those of you that aren't fans of that, I apologize in advance. But there's just so much good stuff. I just kept taking notes off to the sides of my notes, and I know what's going to end up happening. So just bear with me, but this is going to be a good one, because at the end of the day, once again, cash flow is the number one reason that people fail, and I want to make sure that none of you fail. All right, so let's first talk about what tends to happen. That when it comes to cash flow, we already talked about the fact that it is the flow of money in and out of your business and making sure that you have enough of it. Now, where some of those challenges tend to come up are in the following areas. One we talked about earlier, seasonality. When you have really extreme seasonality swings, it creates a problem because your cash flow is the amount of cash that you need is basically going to be your normal expenses. So your rent isn't going to change, any bills that you have on a regular basis, your insurance, if you carry employees year round, there's just a certain amount of things. And I've always told you guys that you need to know how much cash you need to cover your expenses. So let's just say that you normally need, I don't know, $3,000 to a month to do your business. Well, if you don't at least create enough profit to offset that $3,000, you're going to have a cash flow problem. And for some people, it is very common that they'll do, say, $100,000 or $50,000 in certain months, and then they get to certain months and they only do $5,000. Well, $5,000 in sales isn't necessarily going to cover $3,000 worth of expenses, because let's just say you only have a 50% profit margin. Well, guess what? That $5,000 is already $2,500. You don't have enough to cover your $3,000, which then leads, you haven't even paid taxes or anything else that you need to pay. So you're already in the hole, which means you're having to borrow from somewhere else. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you create the cash flow and have the reserves to be able to do that, which we're going to talk about. All right. Another area that cash flow tends to bite people in the butt is unexpected weather events. One, you guys know that I am a huge fan of you having a log. We'll probably talk about it a couple times in this episode. You need to log your sales, and you need to see so that you can see year over year and you can see trends. Well, guess what? Weather tends to have a trend as well. For the most part, if I ask most of you that are in snow areas, when do you get your first snow? You can narrow it down to about a certain week. Some of you are just now getting that snow. When I lived in Utah, I always knew that our first snow was going to be somewhere within a week of Halloween. That's when it was going to pop up. You know what? If I'm here in Arizona and I want to know when is it going to all of a sudden turn to 115 degrees, I pretty much can count that in June, we're going to start getting hot as heck. And sometimes that starts a little bit earlier in May, and you got to be prepared for that. Certain weather patterns you could absolutely predict. You know what? We have monsoons in July. Now, for example, we've been getting all this rain in October. It's not common for us to get rain in October, so that's kind of weird. For some of you, you plan on hurricanes, you plan on tornado season, you know about when your flooding happens. Some of us have some really extreme weather. Mother Nature is a little ticked off right now, and we're having some crazy stuff go on out there. So there are times of the year that you can predict it. So let's just say that you can predict 90% of your weather patterns and be prepared for it. There are 10% of the times when you just can't help it. If you would have told me that I would have been locked in and not be able to get out of my house for a couple of days, that's not something that happens. I've lived here for 14 years. It's happened twice due to just certain ways that the rain goes. So you have to be prepared in your business that there's going to be certain hiccups in weather that you can't expect. But I'm telling you, for most of you, 90% of your weather issues are predictable. Now, could you predict that this one particular day gets rain? No, you're not going to get that. But if you do know that if you're in rainy season, that's going to happen. So you want to make sure that you have the cash flow to be able to cover those weather-related times as well. What about when you have a big invoice that needs to be paid and the client doesn't pay it, and you were counting on that invoice to be able to pay your employees and pay everybody else that was working on that particular project? That's one reason why we always hate to have all our eggs in one basket, but there are certain businesses that are reliant upon that, where you have big jobs. Maybe all of your jobs are $2,000 to $3,000. So when someone doesn't pay a $2,000 to $3,000 job, that definitely hurts you. I know in my real estate side, for example, you know what? It's not like you have 50 million clients. You might have 2, 3, 4, whatever the case may be, and you are counting on those people, those deals to close. So when they don't close, obviously that really hurts your cash flow. But there's quite a few people out there that have larger projects, and maybe you took on a large project. Maybe most of your projects run $500 and you took on one that was $2,000. Well, that's the equivalent of 4 clients. So if that particular job goes bad, it can create a serious cash flow problem. Sometimes unexpected expenses pop up. For those of you that have brick and mortar, raise your hand if your heater or air conditioner has gone out at the worst time possible. Been there, done that a couple of times. Problem with mine was when I had the ice cream shop, if my air conditioner went out in the summer, guess what? I had 7 refrigerator and freezers that also started going kablooey because they couldn't cool down. They needed the air to be able to cool. And it created a huge problem because not only did I have to fix my air conditioner, a lot of times it led to me having to fix some things to do with the freezers or refrigerators. So those could be unexpected expenses that hit your business. And when you have those unexpected things happen in your business, maybe a truck breaks down, one of your vehicles, stuff like that, those could be unexpected. So you want to make sure that you have the right cash flow to cover those. Another time that is huge, that bites a lot of people in the butt, is actually taxes. I could say raise your hand on this one, but I think there's going to be a bunch of them that go up. Is one of the things that bite people on the butt is they do not set aside the money for the taxes. So along comes April, and all of a sudden they start freaking out because they don't have the money that they need. They do their taxes and they find out they don't have the money set aside that they needed. So now they have to rob whatever they have in their emergency fund, or they do the extension. But even with the extension, you still owe the money at the time. And then all of a sudden they get caught up, and next thing you know that they're all caught into this whole pay now or get the money, be behind. I'm behind in 1 year, 2 years. I catch up on this year, and then I'm behind on this next year. And it creates this really bad cycle. And believe it or not, there's a lot of small businesses, period, but especially a lot of small businesses that actually have to close the doors because they're so far behind on their taxes. There's people listening right now. I know of people listening right now that have big tax problems, and it's because they you rob Peter to pay Paul. And what happens is it just creates this problem. So it's really important, and we can talk about this in the future, but just do me a favor. For those of you that keep running into tax problems, or those of you that don't have the system down right, create a separate account and put 25% automatically into that tax thing, and don't even touch it. It needs to be out of sight, out of mind. Because here's where the problem comes in with the cash flow. When we need cash, there's this big chunk of money set aside for taxes, and it's really tempting and easy to use it for our business. And I think a lot of people will agree that they've done that once or twice. And for some of you, it has been very dangerous and costly for your business. So it's really important that you set aside that money for the taxes and set it completely aside and don't even look at it. It needs to be out of sight, out of mind. Taxes are a huge killer for people on their cash flow. So now you're probably going, okay, Tammy, now that I'm thoroughly depressed, you've taught me all these reasons why I am not going to have cash flow. What are we going to do? How do I help this? How do I make this better? All right. Well, let's kind of talk about some of that. All right. First off, it goes back to what I say all of the time. You really, 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 really need to understand your sales and profits. You need to know what you've got coming in, and you need to know of all the sales coming in, how much profits that's going to create. Knowing your numbers is huge, because you got to remember the amount of cash in the bank doesn't necessarily equal your cash flow, because cash flow is never the same number. It's always going to be changing, right? So you need to always know, though, what's coming in, so that way you can have a better planning, if that kind of makes sense. All right. Your money's going to be, it's ebbing and flowing. Very few of you have the exact same sales week after week after week. Some weeks are high, some weeks are low. So you need to understand that flow, which brings us back to the log and having some kind of ledger or something, a spreadsheet. Matter of fact, I put a spreadsheet together that if you want it, I'll try to put it in the show notes. If I don't put it in the show notes and I forget, you can ask for it at, just email me at tammy@localsmallbusinesscoach.com. Once again, tammy@localsmallbusinesscoach.com, or join the Badass group and ask me there. It doesn't matter. But you need to have some log at some point. You need to have year over year and start stacking, because it's going to be able to help you. So the number one thing that you can do is better understand your business, understand what's coming in and understand what's going out, which part of understanding what's going out is going to come back to, you need to have a budget. Okay. And there's where I'm going to start bouncing around a little bit, because, excuse me, I've got notes everywhere when it comes to this part. So bear with me. So I'm just going to tackle them. And if I kind of backtrack a little, just give me some forgiveness. That's all I ask. All right. You need to have a budget. You need to know where your money's going. Part of having a profit and loss on the flip side is you need to have a budget. You need to know how much money you need set aside for certain things. So for example, if you do have a brick and mortar, you know you have a lease. You know approximately what that lease is every single month. Therefore, you need to budget what that is. If you drive a bunch of vehicles, you're going to have to be getting gas through the whole thing. You need to know approximately how much money you need set aside for gas. What's that going to cost? If you have cell phones, what does the cost of those cell phones? No one likes doing a budget. You don't like doing a budget personally. You sure the heck aren't going to love doing a budget for your business, but you need to have it. It is a necessary evil. If you don't know what your money's doing, your money's just going to go do whatever it wants to do. And part of the reason is there's people out there right now listening, and this might resonate with you. There are people out there right now that make tons of money. They have tons of sales. They have tons of profit, but yet they're broke. They're like, how the hell? How do I have so much money coming in and yet I have no money? How is it that I get to the end of the month of my business and I've got no money left? And the reason is you're not paying attention to what your money's doing. You don't have a budget. You're not making sure that what your money's going towards the budget that what you've spent. You don't have it set aside that X amount is going towards these bills, that this amount is going towards retained earnings to stay in it. This is the money that's coming out for me personally and what I'm spending. And there's money set aside over here for taxes and whatnot. For some of you, you've got your personal stuff inside of you're paying your personal stuff out of this money for your business. And that is a huge no. Okay. Your personal stuff needs to be away from your business. That's what your money that you pull out of your company is for. Get it out of the business. Stop right now. Do not pass go. You need to fix that immediately. I talk to somebody almost every single week that is either looking to buy a business or they're struggling in their business. They're struggling with this cash flow. And I'm telling you, that a big reason people don't even have a clue what's going on in their business is because their personal funds are all intermingled. You need to pay for those separately. Now, are there deductions for business? Absolutely. But you need to be very clear about those because what I'm seeing, those aren't what's in there. It's just everything else. Instead of when they go out to dinner, guess what? They whip out the business card instead of the personal card. Or they need to pay for something on Amazon and they use the wrong thing. Those are the kinds of things that you need to make sure that you're not doing. All right. So you need to know a budget. You need to know exactly where your money is going. The other thing is you need to always have an emergency fund in your business. Crap's going to happen. You know what? The weather's going to be bad. You still have bills to pay, right? So if the weather is worse than normal, or let's say the air conditioner does go out or your truck does break down or whatever the case may be, you need to have that emergency fund set aside. You need to be able to infuse cash into the business to be able to take care of that problem. And that's why when we're talking about it's not a normal expense, you normally don't have to fix that every single month. But these are the times when you need to have money that flows into the business. That's where that emergency fund really comes in handy. And then once you get past the crisis, guess what? You fill back up that emergency fund. Now, what should that emergency fund look like? It's going to be different for each of you guys, but a good rule of thumb is you want to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in there. So if you know that you're going to have problems, just start filling that thing up. And it's about telling your money where to go. In one of the future episodes coming up, we're going to talk about Profit First, the book, as well as the E-Myth. They're 2 books I recommend highly, but part of Profits First, even we'll talk about some of that is setting that money aside, which kind of ties into one of the things that I think a lot of people don't do is you don't bank your profits. And what I mean by that is a lot of folks, when they have a lot of money coming into the business, is they just start taking it. And you can't do that. You need to keep that money in the business until you figure out what's the right thing to do with it. Don't get all excited and happy and go, woohoo, I can go to Vegas or something like that. You know, it is a business. I'm not saying that you're not going to give yourself a little bit more money than normal, but you need to make sure that it's done correctly and that money stays within the business. I'm going to apologize right now. If you hear my dog barking in the background, there's obviously movement in my house and everybody's going crazy. So ignore that. All right. Let's see. Where am I at? All right. So let's talk about some other things that we can do to try to help with our cash flow. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they do not make it easy for their people to pay them. Let's face it, when you do something, when you provide your product or service, you need to get paid for that product and service. Brick and mortar, it's easy. They pay at the time of the service, right? Or when they're purchasing stuff. But for those of you that are invoicing people, let's talk to you for a moment, all right? There's some cases when you have some jobs, what you do is you give them the quote on it or you tell them how much it's going to be. You go do the service and then you invoice them. Where a lot of people fall apart is they don't get the invoice out in a timely manner, and then they make it difficult for people to pay. And I want to challenge you. Don't try to save pennies and hurt yourself in the meantime. And this is what I mean by that. There are a lot of business owners that want to be paid in cash, or they want to be paid with a check, and they don't want to use credit cards. And the reason they don't want to use credit cards or debit cards or whatever the case may be is because of the service fee, because they're going to take 3%, 4%, whatever it is, away from that charge. And here's what you're doing is you're shooting yourself in the foot in most cases. And here's why. Because people don't have checks. They don't. Let's face it. People don't have cash on them and they don't have checks. That's the reality. What people have is they have a debit card sitting inside of their wallet that they can pay for things. So when you set up online payments, you allow them to click a button and immediately go make a payment. And does that cut into your profits? Yes. Can you charge them extra for doing it that way? Yes. Now, with that said, you need to be something kind of realistic about it at the same time. I went to go do one for some roof. You guys know I've had some issues with some roof thing, and to pay online for the roofers in another area. So to go online and pay the guy, I wanted to give him his money right away. So I go online and I go to pay, and it was going to charge me like $150 surcharge to be able to pay this roofer. And I was like, what the heck? You can wait for the check now. So I'm like, I'm not going to pay. I don't mind. I wasn't going to mind $20. I wasn't going to mind whatever, but I wasn't going to do $100. So yeah, something like that. You need to give them the option. There's some people that wouldn't even blink at giving them the $100 because of the ease of it. For me, it was something different, but you need to give people the option to do it, because if he had the option, then guess what? If I was one of those people that wouldn't blink, he'd have his $3,000 immediately. All right. Whereas if I'm somebody who doesn't want to pay that surcharge, then guess what? Then I'm going to mail him his check and he's going to get his money. But here's the thing. It ended up taking, I think, an extra, by the time he got the money, it probably took him an extra 2 weeks to get the money because of the whole process and everything. So you have to ask yourself, is it worth, not charging the customer that $100 to wait 2 more weeks to get paid? Now, maybe in his business, it was worth that time frame. So that's something you have to look individually for your particular business. But you do need to have the option. I'm telling you, people want to pay with their credit card. They want to pay with their debit card. And you need to give them that option to be able to do that. And don't get hung up on pennies over dollars, because if you want that cash flow and you want that money coming in, make it easy for them to pay. And if you need to pass it along, pass it along. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. Just make sure it makes sense, just like that rant I just kind of went on in the middle of it. Sorry about that. But the reality is people want to pay with that credit card. So quit making it difficult for people to pay you. Okay. Quit making it difficult for people to pay you. And you do this because you don't send out the invoice, first off, and then you don't make it easy for them to get you the money. There's a couple of people that I work with that I laugh because they'll do a job. Let's say they finish the job on Wednesday. They don't get the bill out till Monday. And then they get mad because the person hasn't paid them by Tuesday. Well, first off, you know what? You already dragged out 5 days to get the bill to the person. They've already moved on to the next crisis in their life. Whereas if you got the bill out to them the day you did it, the more likely they're going to pay you, because it's top of mind awareness. I want you to look in the mirror. When you're not getting paid, what is it that you're doing? Another common mistake that we've talked about in the past is you need to get some of the money up front. When you do those big jobs, and all of a sudden you're out $5,000, and it turns out you didn't collect half up front or something like that, that's where you need to look at your process and ask yourself, why did you not collect? At minimum, you should collect for your product costs and stuff like that. So at least you can get that bill paid while you wait. If you want to put your labor on hold, that's one thing. But if you want to put your products, your cost of goods on hold, that's why you need to collect that money up front. So make sure that you're looking correctly at the right way that you should be billing. Another way that you can increase your cash flow, since I've been beating that one to a horse, we'll move on to the next one, is through something I talk about all the time. You hear me mention that you need to deal with the inventory that you have. And this inventory could be on shelves in your store. It could be on shelves in your garage. It could be in your shed. It could be in your backyard. If you have junk tied up in inventory in things that you might need someday, just remember, I say this all the time. All that is dollar bills sitting on your shelf. All right? Dollar bills sitting on your shelf that you can't spend. Inventory and the control of inventory is a huge factor in cash control. you want to make sure that just because you got a great deal, but now you have 200 years worth of something, that doesn't make it a great deal. And if you buy something and it's to cover for the next 6 months and you're going to turn it pretty quickly, that's one thing. But sometimes you guys will buy things or not return things or whatever the case may be, and they sit there for like a year, 2 years, 3 years. Some of you are thinking about right now that if you look at where your inventory is at, you could probably go, yeah, guilty. May not be a lot, but it's some. Just remember, anything that sits there is just money sitting on the shelves. Can you run a special? Can you use it? Can you sell it to somebody else? Can you do a yard sale? Whatever the case would be. Get that money converted back into cash. It gives you more cash for your cash flow. Don't let it just sit there. And a lot of times people will do this on supplies and stuff like that. So just be careful of the inventory. There's a few episodes in the past where we talk about inventory. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future, but that a lot of times that will kill your cash flows. Go back on something that I forgot. I jotted this note down. When it comes to getting people to pay you, sometimes people will offer discounts if they pay within a certain amount of time, especially if you have certain products or services that you tend to give people 30 days note. For example, some of you guys have invoices where they can pay you 30 days later. One of the great things that you can offer people is a discount if they pay you within the first 10 days. That'll help free up some of that cash flow. So for those of you with longer pay times that aren't due immediately, try to have a little discount attached to it that if they pay you in the first week or whatever the case may be, within the first 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever, give them some kind of discount. You might find that they pay you actually faster, because sometimes people have the money to pay, but they just know that, hey, if you're not going to get it from me till the end of the month, I'm not going to rush to get you paid. So take advantage of those people, the people that are sitting on the money that would be more than willing to pay you. Have you ever had that with you personally, where someone says, oh, I can give this to you for 3 monthly payments, but in your heart, you can make the one payment and get it over with. It's just one of those things where it's better for you to pay now. So just look at that and see if that's another way that you can do it. I already talked about the fact that you need to know your business. You need to do that daily log. So you want to keep doing that. All right. And finally, the thing I want to talk about, there's a lot in there and I'm sure there's even more, but I'm just trying to hit the main stuff, is the other thing that I want to do. Just like I want you to really understand your sales and your profits and what's coming in and how that's converting into money. The other thing that I really want to recommend that you do is you pay your bills on time. And it kind of comes off of this last one that we were just talking about as well. When you start to fall behind on your bills, you tend to forget things. And then you have these surprises where you open up something and all of a sudden something's way overdue and you're like, oh my God, how did I miss that? It's because you don't pay your bills on a regular basis. We all know how much local business owners in general, struggle with staying on top of the bookkeeping side of their business, the invoicing, the payments, keying stuff in, whatnot, shoe boxes full of junk that they have to do. But by paying your bills on a weekly basis, one, it makes it more manageable. It's smaller, but things don't slip through the cracks. And if you're going to do it once a month, then at least have a system where all the bills go into one place so you can make sure that nothing is missed. I know for me personally, one of the things that I run into is because our mail comes, it takes forever to get picked up because we live in the desert, so we don't get it necessarily every day. Then it goes to the kitchen table and then it goes to my office. And by then it's touched by a bunch of different hands. And there's been times when things have been missed. Thank God I catch it in right amount of time, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had this for 2 weeks. Why did I not get this? Whatever system you have, make sure that your bills come to a certain place so that way you can stay on top of them. And by paying them right away, it actually helps you control that money because you know exactly what's coming off. Because you know that if you have set aside $1,000 for your bills, I'm just using that number, but if you have $1,000 set for your side, guess what? When you pay that bill for $100, you now have $900. And if all of a sudden you get a bill for $1,200, you can go, holy cow, I only have $1,000. What do I need to do to be able to open up that cash flow to be able to get more? Do I need to sell some of that inventory? Do I need to follow up on certain payments? What is it that I need to do? Same thing is by paying the bills weekly, you make sure that nothing gets through, but you also have a really good gauge about what is still needed for the rest of the month. So hopefully that part is making sense. Whew, that is a lot of stuff. Okay, cash flow is huge. And here's the thing. My main thing is I don't want any of you guys to fail. The last thing on earth is I do not want you to fail. And part of all the advice and all the things that we talk about is in order for you to be able to create the sales you need, to create the profits that you need, but then also to create the cash flow within your business to keep your business nice and healthy. and continuing to grow and to generate even more sales, even more profits. And I am so thankful to Paul for bringing this topic up. And it really forced me to realize that as much as I talk about sales and profits, I don't talk about cash flow enough. I talk about different pieces of it, but I don't pull that whole picture together enough. And hopefully this episode is definitely going to help you guys start wrapping your head around the importance of understanding not only the word cash flow, but the true meaning of cash flow and the movement of money through your business. The cash flowing through your business isn't just about the being able to pay your bills. That's a huge chunk of it, but it's about those sales coming in. It's about turning it into that profit, and then what you do with that profit and having the money that you need to be able to run that business. It all interlocks together, and you really need to understand all of those different components to it. Because listen, my whole goal, my whole mission is to help you guys make more money. And I want you to have the financial dreams and successes that people have. And for some of you, that's about taking your business from $30,000 to 50, from 50 to 100, from 100 to 200. It doesn't really matter. And that's what we're here for. And that's what our mission is. And by the way, and I know I don't talk about it enough, but if you want, I have a free ebook called The 8 Steps to 100,000 and in profits. And it doesn't matter where you're at, because like I said, if you want to go to 30 to 50, it works. The same steps work if you want to go from 50 to 100, or if you want to go from 100 to 200. It's the same exact stuff that we do on a regular basis. There's 8 steps to get there to be able to grow your business to that next level. And if you would like that, just go over to localsmallbusinesscoach.com/8 steps. I believe it's in the show notes. If not, I will make sure that it's in the show notes, as well as that tracking form that I had talked about earlier. I'll make sure that's in there. But here's the thing. I really, 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 really want you guys to focus on your cash flow. Okay. For the rest of this year, we're getting to the end of the year. We're going to start coming up here in the next few episodes. We're going to start really getting ready to start planning out our next year. And one of those things is one of our goals and one of our missions for 2019. And no matter when you hear this, even in the future, one of our missions is, how do we help you become better businessmen and women, and to really, really understand your business? So right now, let's really focus on cash flow over the next few weeks. I want you to dive in deep and to ask yourself, what is causing you to have massive headaches and massive pain when it comes to your cash flow? All right. So that's what I really want you to do, is start diving in. I want you to start looking at how you're invoicing, how you're getting money, how you're getting paid. Is that where you're falling down? Maybe all these don't fit you, but just find the one that does, and how you can get paid better. Do you need a budget? Do you need everything above? Is there money sitting on the shelves? Whatever the case may be, what's one thing that you can take action on that will automatically start helping you increase your cash flow, to have more money flowing through the business? So that way you are prepared for when you have that seasonality. You are prepared for those weather problems that pop up, that you are prepared for when that equipment breaks, that you are prepared that if your road shuts down for the day, that you can't prepare on. That's what cash flow is all about. And that's what I want to make sure that you are ready for. All right, with that, I am going to start wrapping this puppy up. And if you want, like I said, this question came from our Badass Local Small Business Owner Facebook page. If you'd like to join us over there, we are growing every single week and love the engagement. I really love the advice that folks are giving each other in there. Obviously, I'm in there. I'm trying to talk and engage as well. So if you would love to be part of that, it's also in the links below, but also if you're on Facebook, just look for Badass Local Business Owners and come join us over there. We'd love to have you. And with that, I'm sure there's 50 other things that I could ask you to do, but I'm not going to. I want you to dive into that. I want you to dive into your cash flow. Okay. That's the biggest thing you can do for me today. That'll make Tammy happy. We want to make Tammy happy, because if Tammy's happy, Tammy makes you happy, and it's a circle. All right. I'm getting goofy. All right. I need to go. So I will talk to you guys next week. Bye for now. Hey, badass business owner, before you go, are you sick and tired of working so many hours and still not being able to grow your business? Are you ready to start earning the income you deserve for the work you are doing? Do you have so many ideas and you just don't know where to start? Well, maybe you need a business coach. And guess what? I just happen to know one. Yeah, me. We can do a one-time strategy session, or we can set up a 6-week coaching plan. If you would like to learn more about this, just click on the link in the show notes or go to localsmallbusinesscoach.com/work-with-me. You can take a quick survey so I can learn a little bit more about your business, and then we can set up your free consultation call. Remember, I'm here to help. You do not have to do this alone.